Nikola Jovic keep growing into a building block for Miami. We look at Jovic's continued evolution and if he's a star in the making. Plus, some reporting on the Heat scheduled draft workouts provide a little clarity on what they might do. And is Jimmy Butler feeling the West Coast or is it something more? We break it all down in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, you are Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day, Monday to Friday. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil, both of us credentialed Heat media members. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We've got some draft intel, and we'll talk about some emerging names the Heat might target with the 15th pick before projecting Nikola Jovic's ceiling. But David, let's start with Jimmy Butler, who was interviewed while sitting courtside for a recent LA Sparks game and went out of his way to say 22 looks good in purple and gold. And then for the Sparks social media, he had this little interview.
First and foremost, y'all see this shirt / jersey that I'm wearing right now. 22 purple and gold. Says Brink on the back, not Butler, unfortunately. Sorry, LA fans. But hey, shout out to you, Cam.
So Jimmy Butler going out of his way to talk about how his number 22 would look good in the purple and gold, which is obviously the Sparks colors, the Lakers colors. They all share the same colors. David, is this something or is this nothing?
It's a little something. It's unfortunate, but I think that's also where it is. And I know a lot of fans will say, oh, you guys have been eager to trade Jimmy Butler. Absolutely not. Like, just think of it from a business perspective if you want to. Like, Jimmy is good for our numbers. We don't want any superstar traded out of it. We would want a team composed of nothing but superstars for our benefits. But that's not the case at all. This is just Jimmy kind of poking at the bear a little bit, which is what he does. He is always very measured for whatever insanity people might kind of casually dismiss between emo Jimmy and anything else like that, riding a horse, appearing in music videos, silly commercials. He does not do anything haphazardly. There's always a reason for it. I also think he might have been a little intoxicated sitting courtside, said he was up to some fun activities while he's in the Los Angeles area. And why not? That's what a superstar millionaire should do. And so I totally expect that as well. And I know he was there to go see an admirer in Cameron Brink of the Sparks. So it makes a lot of sense. That's the Cam he was referring to and the Brink on the back of that jersey. So, it's a very interesting method by Jimmy. I think he's kind of just putting it out there a little bit and saying, look, if Miami don't want me, I know plenty of teams that would. And I think that's something that he is fully aware of, even at this stage in his career. For all the talk about whether or not Miami can afford to pay him, there's probably other teams, Los Angeles included, that would absolutely want a player of Jimmy Butler's caliber on their roster.
I think it's a little bit of something. I don't want to overreact to it. This is just a few weeks after he was seen at the Miami Grand Prix saying, I love Miami, I love this city. And everybody saw that interview and was like, "You can't. Jimmy's never leaving. He wants to be here forever."
Was that after Pat Riley's press conference? So I can't recall. It was. So he heard Pat call him out, quote unquote, and then he went ahead and doubled down and said, "I love Miami." Okay, fair enough.
And so this is Jimmy Butler. He's a troll, and he's gonna troll, and you can see him in the video. He's smiling as he's saying it, going out of his way to bring it up. The courtside, the reporter was not like, how do you think your number would look good in the NBA version of these colors and these uniforms? He was not asked a question even remotely close to that. It was a very basic sideline reporter question. How you like in LA, sitting courtside here with, here's a softball. And he was like, I think I would look great in this jersey.
For some reason. It's for some reason that I get hung up on. It's
right.
Oh, if for some reason I should wind up playing with the Lakers, I bet you my 22 in purple and gold would look phenomenal. It's like, okay, thanks, Jimmy.
He knows what he's doing. So this to me is 80% Jimmy just trolling. But also that doesn't come from nothing, right? He also wasn't doing this in previous summers when there wasn't a contract negotiation to be had. So this is also him just putting something out there. And We all know where he stands, and this to me doesn't change anything. This doesn't sound like to me he's going to force his way to the Lakers. I'm not starting to read into that. He was in the Bay Area within the last few days too, and that got Warriors fans started to speculate whether or not he was leveraging trying to go to Golden State. No, he's spending some time in California, and that means nothing. But the part of it that I am reading into is that this is going to be a dance. This is a tightrope this summer that the Heat are trying to walk and that Jimmy Butler is trying to walk. He wants his contract. That's his first priority. His second priority would be getting that contract and staying in Miami forever. And I think he's made that clear. I think that he's made that clear through what has been leaked by his side, saying, I'm going to get this max contract, whether it's from Miami or somewhere else. I think it's clear that Philadelphia is willing to sign him to that max contract. I think the Lakers, even though I think the fit would be horrible, I mean, that was just like, did you learn nothing from the Russell Westbrook thing? I mean, Jimmy Butler is a better player now than Russell Westbrook was then, but in terms of zero floor spacing, it's an awful fit. Like, we saw how that works, you know?
Yep.
Talent can only get you so far. You do need some spacing. But I think the Lakers would still, it doesn't matter. I think they might still look in that direction. I think the Warriors would certainly kick the tires on Jimmy Butler if we want to keep going further down that road. Obviously, Philadelphia's out there. Houston's looking to make a big move. I think there's going to be teams willing to give Jimmy Butler that max contract if the Heat aren't. And this side, and I knew that before the sideline interview, and I know it after the sideline interview.
Would he be there? Would he be a good fit with the Clippers if Paul George winds up leaving in free agency to Philadelphia?
If everybody's healthy, sure, but it seems like Jimmy Butler is just another version of Kawhi Leonard. It's like, which one of these guys they would probably never play together, even if they were on the same team for years, they would never be on the court at the same time.
Yeah, the first game of the playoffs, it's like, oh, let's see what they look like next to each other. We've never really seen this.
You know what's funny is I actually think for the Clippers, DeMar DeRozan is a better fit, even though Jimmy Butler is the far superior player. Just for their needs, you need somebody who's going to be there for 80 games a year,
and he's that.
And Paul George was that, and to a certain degree, certainly more than Kawhi. But yeah, I don't know. If we were to just sort of do the whole hypothetical of Jimmy Butler doesn't get the Heat say, no, we're not giving you the max contract extension. Jimmy Butler says, okay, here's my list of preferred destinations. Then it's Philly, it's the Lakers, it's whatever, the Warriors, the Clippers, whatever. Let's say the Lakers are on that list. It does behoove Miami to send him to the Western Conference as opposed to trade him in the conference to Philadelphia. And
that is true.
I don't know. The Lakers are very similar to the Heat in terms of what they have available on draft night. They can sort of unlock a third first-round pick, so they can trade up to 3 first-round picks, including the one later this month. So they could do all that stuff with whatever swaps. They have a white guard that they are trying to make the centerpiece of all of their deals in Austin Reeves. Miami's version of that is Tyler Hero. They've got some interesting chunky contracts. Maybe you can bring back Gabe Vincent. Rui Hachimura is a player that you and I like, maybe me a little bit more than you. I don't know. I don't know that it would excite me, but it would feel a lot like what we're trying to, like every Heat fan trying to convince other teams, hey, our package is really good. You should take this for your star. It would be Heat fans kind of being forced to do the same thing.
Yeah, no, totally. And look, even as we were talking about this, like Jimmy did follow this pattern before. Like when he requested a trade, he provided the list. I don't know how often that's done. I don't know how often that's reported, but I remember clearly when he wanted out of Minnesota, Miami was on the list of teams that he would have preferred to. Ultimately, it didn't wind up mattering, but still, I think if there's a pattern to follow in terms of what Jimmy would do if he were to request a trade from Miami, he would probably provide a list of teams that he would prefer playing for. Miami could just take that list and wipe their ass with it the same way Joe Cronin did with Damian Lillard. So it doesn't really matter. You can provide anything you want to. We don't really care. We'll see how that all plays out. I don't know. At this point, I would say I'm still 50-50 on the possibility of Jimmy Butler staying with a team. And not, again, for no personal wish or anything like that. I just think that they're going to have to figure it out. I still have questions about whether or not they can afford to pay him that contract. And I don't know whether or not Jimmy responds to any other negotiation quite as favorably as we did during our mock off season a few weeks ago. So it's going to be really, really interesting. At this point in time, we're just kind of waiting for the finals so the drama can really start. And that's what happens. It just kind of kicks into full gear as you're leading into the draft. You start to see trades come in. You start to hear the buzz of free agency, requested trades.
Do we need to bring out the flow chart again? If the Heat can get that star player, that's not Jimmy Butler, like another star player, then you trade for that star player, and then you just sign Jimmy Butler to the extension. You say, the hell with it. Our window is back open. Let's go.
Yeah.
And 3 years from now, we'll deal with it then. But if you can't go get that star player, then you can't really justify then giving Jimmy Butler this max contract and returning a roster with this payroll that's been in the play-in tournament 2 years in a row. And I just don't think that the Heat could justify. That's just my feel for it is then maybe it's sort of a zero-sum thing where it's like, okay, we get all the stars that we're trying to get, or if we don't get that first star, then we have to trade away the current star that we have, and we're kind of reshuffling the deck a little bit. So who knows? Some mornings I wake up, I'm like, there's no way Jimmy Butler's leaving Miami. How could that ever happen? And then there's other mornings where I wake up, I'm like, the guy's gone. There's no way the Heat are going to give him that extension. I have no idea what's going to happen. Nobody has any idea what's going to happen. Not yet, because negotiations can't start until the day after the finals. And one thing I will say is I do think that this won't be resolved quickly. I think it's going to take a while, where maybe some other extensions around the league will get resolved a little bit faster than this situation with Miami and Jimmy. But we are going to move on. We've got some new intel on who the Heat could be targeting with the 15th pick. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your car alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions do apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. We're on the road to 14,000 subscribers, and we are nearly there. So if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button right now. While you're there, hit that like button. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think Jimmy Butler flirting with the Lakers means. Is it something or is it nothing? All right, let's move on to the NBA draft. First round, June 26th. Second round, June 27th. We're going to be here right after the draft to break down what happens. But among the prospects who the Heat have scheduled for pre-draft workouts in Miami include Devin Carter, Khalil Ware, Isaiah Collier. We've done our scouting reports in our Blue Notebook series on all three of those guys. So if you're interested in hearing more about what those guys could bring to the table and their potential fits in Miami, you can check those out in your feed. They're also going to work out G League Ignite forward Ron Holland. That was reported by ESPN. But it's safe to assume that they're going to work out everybody in this range, right? The Tristan da Silvas, the Zach Edey's, all these guys. Like, they're going to work out all these guys.
Edey wasn't scheduled for a workout, though. But, I mean, that's not to say that he won't be or that it just
Correct.
wasn't reported. But, yeah.
Right. I mean, it's safe to say that they're going to work out as many of these guys as they can. So,
yeah, I mean, it doesn't – there's no harm in working him out. But they may have also seen enough to know that maybe he might not be an ideal fit for Eric Spoelstra's system, which is a possibility. I'm not discounting it. Or maybe they just, there's always a possibility of the smoke screen. We didn't bring him in for a workout, but he was our guy all along, and you never know until it plays out in the drafts. And that's just one of the interesting things here is that they always focus on their players. You brought it up many times before. They look at a particular player that fits their 3-point checklist, as you put it, and it's a very interesting way of framing it. But they like their guy, regardless of where they are in the draft, because they think once they get their player in, that they can develop them fully and get them to be that next level player. And Anthony Chang's report via the Miami Herald, even Adam Simon, vice president, I can't exactly recall what his title is, but he's a key part of their scouting process. And they've been doing a lot of scouting according to that piece by Chang. And he basically confirms everything we've said, that we want
here.
Our guy. Yeah, go for it. Let's hear it.
This is from Adam Simon. I think the draft is deep with a lot of good players. Even in years when the narrative has been the draft might not be as good as other years, if you look at it, there still ends up being all-stars and very good players throughout that draft. So I think we have the approach. I think we have to approach it like, hey, regardless of what the thought is, we're hoping to find the right players that eventually, when developed and are with us can become good players for us. So like you said, there's going
What our guy.
to, the draft ain't really, this draft isn't good, but it's mostly considered not a good draft because you don't have elite prospects at the top. Fortunately for Miami, they don't have to deal with that problem because they're not drafting in the top 3, 5
Right.
of this draft. They're just right in the middle of the first round. And most people that do evaluate this draft say, yeah, the middle of the first round, it just feels like there's a lot of guys in this draft who would be middle of the first round picks in most drafts. But there's
Right.
just not that elite top crop of talent. And so that's fine for the Heat who are picking at 15. I think they're going to find a solid player. They could find a solid player there. And I do think that Miami over the last few years have changed the way they think about the draft a little bit more, where it's a real tool for them to flesh out the rest of their roster, the rest of the depth chart. They look at it as a way to acquire depth, rotation level players in a world where the CBA is a little bit more restrictive. Free agency is limited for them because of where they are. They're basically they're limited to signing guys to a veteran minimum contract, where in the draft you can get a good young player with
Right.
potential. And those players are really hard to get in free agency. So they use it as a tool. And yeah, if one of those players pops and becomes your next Bam Adebayo, awesome, great. And maybe Jaime Jaquez Jr. and Nikola Jovic can become that. We'll talk about Jovic here in a little bit. But going back to who they're working out, we already mentioned the Herald report. ESPN reported that Devin Carter, who the Heat are working out, is even seeing interest from teams in the top 10. He mentions the Spurs at number 8 and the Grizzlies at number 9. So it's starting to look a little bit less likely like that Devin Carter would fall to Miami. But I do think that Devin Carter, just based on all the things that we know about him and the Heat, is probably high up on Miami's big board. I think it would be safe to say where it is. Nobody really knows. But
Right.
and then Jared McCain, the Duke guard, we did a scouting report on him as well. Knockdown shooter out of Duke with some interesting ball skills. Gavoni writes that teams in the middle of the first round range could be looking at McCain. He lists specifically Memphis, OKC, Sacramento, Miami, Los Angeles, Orlando, and Toronto. And then in terms of Zach Edey, Gavoni wrote that that Edey's in the conversation for teams like Memphis at number 9, Utah, Chicago, OKC, Portland, and Miami. So he mentions Miami in connection to Edey as well. So we'll see what happens here. Obviously, I do think in terms of the importance of this stuff, we eat up like who they working out and what does this mean and all this stuff. It don't really mean a whole lot. Teams will draft players they never worked out. Teams will draft players they did work out. It
Somebody
means a lot for the intel. It means a lot for the intel on their part, right? Like they want to work these guys out and meet them and have a dinner with them and get to know these players. But in terms of somebody trying to figure out what's going to happen in the draft, just because a team worked out a player does not necessarily mean they like the player. They could work out the player and say, wow, that workout did not go well. We don't like this player anymore. So just because they work them out doesn't really mean a whole lot.
Yeah, to that point, there looks like they're working out. If you're going to take anything from that, they're working out probably an inordinate amount of guards, which you and I have talked about. That might not necessarily be the most important target in terms of like your draft. Like if you're going to draft size or something like that, I know a lot of fans really want Miami to covet more size, but maybe they just don't feel like that's something that they can address through the draft, or maybe they can find a player in the second round that they might be able to kind of fill that need for. I don't know. Again, you can't
it's
really
also based on the board falls in a certain way where Miami's picking is mostly guards are sort of projected to go in that range. There's not a whole lot of centers other than basically Kel'el Ware and Zach Edey that are thought to be, and Yves Missy, depending on who you ask and what boards you're looking at. Like those are sort of the names, but even like guys like Kel'el Ware and Missy are more considered maybe in the 20s type picks than the early teens. Now again, maybe that doesn't matter for the Heat.
Climbing up in a lot of scouting reports. I thought
he's 25 according to ESPN, but it wouldn't shock me based on his skill set and the fact that this is such a bare center draft that he could just go higher based on, hey, we're a team picking in the teens. We need a center. He's the best one on the board, even if it's a little bit of a reach. But I think that they're working out all these guys because these are the guys that are sort of in the conversation around where they're picking. It's just unfortunately that's just something you're just sort of beholden to who's in the draft. So I don't know.
Is there a surprise name there that you've heard?
Not really.
No.
You do all your due diligence. You work all these guys out. You figure it out. I like that they're working out Ron Holland from the G League Ignite. He was a guy who's been slipping on boards, was considered a sure top 10 pick for a while, and now he seems to be slipping. I think as teams are a little bit wary of his 3-point shot, it's not good. It basically doesn't exist. but the guy is a toolsy wing, lockdown defensive potential. And if he were to fall to Miami at 15, I would still be surprised if he was there by the 15th pick. But you never know. Guys slide every year, right? Cam Whitmore slid out of the top 12-ish last year down to Houston at 20-something. So, and he ended up being great for them. So, you never know. So, I don't know. That was, to answer your question, that was sort of the one name I was like, oh, that would be kind of interesting if he fell. Nikola Jovic, we haven't talked about this. We haven't really done a scouting report on him on the show. I've watched the film.
He was supposed to be a top 5 guy.
Yeah, he was in the conversation at number 1 for a while too, and he's got the ACL tear, and it looks like he's going to slide. Most people still think that because of his ceiling and that he's young and the injury doesn't seem to be too severe, he'll still probably go in the top 10. But worth noting, because of the new CBA, the only teams in the top 15 are automatically given medicals to every prospect. And the Heat are right on the edge of that. They're 15. So they're going to get medicals automatically on Jovic. So that's kind of interesting. I just thought that was worth throwing out there. I still would be surprised if he was on the board by the time they picked. But
even if he did, I don't think that they would make that selection. I don't think that they would want, to your point earlier, like they want players that can kind of contribute sooner rather than later. And if he's going to be on the shelf for a while, despite whatever potential might be there, I don't know if that they would take that chance to the draft.
I have my own personal like Miami Heat big board that I'm sort of working on, and I've knocked some guys off of it. I've just left guys off the board completely. Jovic is one of the guys that I just took off my board. Even so,
you had Collier off your board too, and they bring him in for a workout.
They have to. That's what it doesn't mean anything. You bring him in for a workout, you see what he's got. Maybe, and like I said, they see the workout.
Scouting
this guy can't shoot a lick. He's off our board.
Our scouting reports are not their scouting reports. You know, they're going to do their due diligence. Like
you have to. It's your job. It doesn't hurt. And the other part about these workouts too, a lot of them are agency created. So if you're part of an agency, you're part of a group, you kind of just do a tour. Like you're almost on concert, right? You go through a tour across the NBA landscape. You kind of go to different cities and you do your workouts there, and you do them in these group settings. So Collier might be part of a group where it's just like, hey, you want to work out this guy? Well, he's part of the group, so just work them all out. And the Heat will be like, oh, great, fine, no problem.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not bring them all in. No. That's how a lot of these things are organized too. That's why I always say, like, I know fans like latch on to these reports like, oh my God, they're working this guy out. What does it mean? Nothing. It means nothing. I hate the burst bubbles, but like,
no. They might like actually want to like see somebody else, and then somebody else winds up popping during these workouts. And so it could be somebody that's not even currently on the board. It's like, hey, you know what? That guy can actually play. You know, that's just how it works out. Like you kind of have to do as much information, gather as much information, look into as many different possibilities as are available to you. So it's just
interesting note here from Gavoni, Jared McCain. Not doing any 1-on-0 workouts. So he's not going through shooting drills. He's just not doing it. Everything he's doing is in a group setting. And I feel like the Heat would love that. He's like, nope, I want to, I can shoot the ball. I don't need to show you shoot the ball. Look at all my percentages. Nobody doubts I could shoot the ball. No, I want to answer all the other questions you have about me, whether or not I could defend, I could switch, I could ball handle, all these other things. I think the Heat love that. I bet you they love that.
That's kind of a ballsy move there. So I think they would love that. They would absolutely want it. If they shows out, like part of what they said about Bam is that Bam kind of just like challenged Pat Riley during his workout. They're like, oh yeah, this guy's our guy.
How do you? If I wanted to get drafted by the Heat, I would just I would read that. That was I think Zach Lowe reported that in his ESPN piece, and Bam was just like, "That's all you got. That's all you got." You're just like, "All right, cool, playbook. I got it. Like, thank you." If I wanted to get drafted by the Heat, I would just go into these workouts and just be like, "F you, Pat. F you, Spo. That's all you got. Give me more." Like they'd be like, "All right, we're
Wade ain't here. Wade ain't here.
Yeah,
you need me to bring you a title.
You need me. It'd be great.
I like him. You know, that's
it's like catnip for this front office. Like, yeah, we have to draft this guy. I don't know. How good can Nikola Jovic be? We'll talk about that next.
Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn, it's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. I've been there. I've had to hire somebody and fire somebody, unfortunately, but hiring somebody can be a real chore because you have to sort through resumes, find the right person, set up interviews. No, none of that. LinkedIn says that Sets it all up for you so easily. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing a lot of hats and they might not have the time or the resources to hire somebody, so they're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker than ever before. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for their hiring purposes. Yours could be next. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Nikola Jovic told Hoops Hype over the last couple days, quote, "I know I can grow in a lot of ways basketball-wise. There's not one thing that I can focus on. I have to focus on so many of them, like from shooting to dribbling, passing, basically everything. I feel like there's so much room and space where I can improve, and I feel like I'll show it at least a little more next season." End quote. Nikola Jovic, it's going to be a big summer for him, a big season for him after what was a really big season for him. Emerged as Miami's starting power forward. They kind of threw him into the fire with no real other options, and he ends up starting playoff games for them. And I think everybody around here was very impressed by what they saw from Nico. Of course, he could be part of any trade packages that could bring back a star. I think Miami would prefer to hold on to Jovic, though, because getting guys with that specific skill set, almost 7 feet tall, can shoot, dribble, and pass, space the floor, showed flashes of being a switchable defender last year, which was far and away, I think, more than what anybody expected in year 2 for this guy. He was awesome, and he put on muscle. I mean, I'm very, very high on Nico's ceiling, and if I'm Miami, I'm trying very hard to hold on to him no matter what.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think you would probably even, and it's not a knock on Jaime Jaquez, but he feels, despite what success he showed, he feels a little bit more replaceable than the potential for. I would say that Jaquez might be the better player right now, and certainly the stats would back that up last year. But I think based on potential, given Nico's age, his size, all the things that you pointed out, if he reaches that potential, which is a huge if, and there's no guarantee that he'll do it, but although Miami is the best team to bring that potential out of him, he could probably be the better overall player than Jaime could. Again, not a knock. Somebody has to be the better amongst the two. They're both have the potential for being very good players.
Yeah,
I think Jaime's a little further along.
It's just a harder archetype kind of player to find, right?
Yeah.
Like the Nikola Jovic prototype, the
7-footer
who can shoot, dribble, and pass.
Yeah.
That's just a hard player to find. It's why a guy like Larry Markkinen is in so much demand, right? Like if Danny Ainge does listen to offers, there's going to be 25 teams calling him with an offer, right? And so these players are just harder to find than the 6'6" wing who could do a little bit of everything. And Jaime, the Heat have, kind of going back to our point earlier, drafted and developed 2 really key rotation guys in the last 2 drafts. And I think it's why, if you're a Heat fan, you do have to take this draft really seriously if they end up keeping all these guys, and this is how they build their team going forward. They've done a really good job in the draft, and I think we did our podcast after they drafted Nikola Jovic. We had done our Blue Notebook scouting report on him a little bit, but we didn't really seriously consider him for Miami because the Heat, just as a front office, had not typically gone overseas and drafted guys from Europe and brought them here. And he was sort of the first one that they really did that with, and then they put all the resources into it. What they have helped Nikola Jovic become in Miami is among one of their better sort of developmental success stories so far, right?
I'm trying to recall the last one before that. I think it was Sasha Danilovic. Like,
oh geez,
forever ago. Like most people probably don't even remember that name. But again, they kind of felt burnt by that process because Danilovic was a good shooter, fine, but I think the adjustment of the European player was a little difficult for him, and that's still a concern for a lot of European players. It's just a completely different lifestyle, and trying to understand how to get along with American-born players and things in the NBA life in general could be a challenge. But with Nico's case, I think the idea that he had played internationally a little bit, he knew English, and the idea that also he was a hard worker, somebody who could fit Miami's kind of system and adapt. And he did. Like he grew while he was here. He's like grown as a player, and he admits that in his Hoops Hype interview.
And has literally grown.
Also, yes, putting on the muscle was
I
a
think
huge
I
thing.
think he's like an inch taller than he was when he was drafted or something. I don't know if it's
Might
an
have been
inch, but
6'10".
he was
Yeah,
listed at 6'10" and now he's listed at 6'11", so I don't know. I think at the end of the first round now, I went back and looked at some of the recent drafts. There's good players that have been found at the end of the first round, and
for
I
sure.
don't know. It used to not be the case. Like basically, the end of the
Right,
first round was almost just a dead zone.
right.
But you look over the years, Jaden McDaniels picked at 28. Desmond Bain was picked at 30, a few years ago.
Right.
Peyton Pritchard was 26. Emmanuel Quickley,
Wow.
25. You've got guys who have carved out careers. Even Desmond Bain, maybe the most successful in terms of being like a star level player, not star level, but almost like fringe all-star-ish kind
Right.
of player there.
Yeah,
You can get guys now there. I just think the
absolutely.
talent pool in the draft is so wide now that Europe and all these other kind of leagues, whether it's OTE or the G League Ignite or all these other things, have become real options. So I don't think just because of his draft placement, you necessarily need to put a ceiling on Nikola Jovic anymore. And
Can, can I tell you one thing that I really liked about that Jovic interview?
yeah,
His calls out specifically Russell Westbrook.
yeah,
And what he liked about him was the fact that he just, I mean, Westbrook, for all that he's become kind of like a walking meme of lacking self-awareness, like his Thunder days, and this is why people adore Russell Westbrook. Like he was just so nonstop, and he would attack the basket with such ferocity on every drive that it made him such a joy to watch. And Nico kind of points that out. He's just like, he was always there. He was just playing so hard every time.
always playing hard every possession, every night. He loved it. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's why like the way that almost this generation, maybe not this generation, no, it's almost the previous generation, like Dwayne Wade's generation talked about Allen Iverson
yes,
is going to be very
pound for
similar to how
pound,
this next
pound for
generation
pound.
talks about Russell Westbrook. I think is going to be
Yeah,
that guy just was out there every single night playing his butt off in a world where
I could
you've
see
got
it.
so many stars doing the load management thing and taking days. He never took a day off. Think of what you might about his game, the fact that he never developed a 3-point shot. Did he really deserve the MVP? Was he stat padding with the triple double? Whatever. That dude showed up every single night and played his butt off. And the fact that Nikola Jovic is talking about that, the Heat were like, yeah, we would love guys who show up for 82 games and play their butt off every single night, because that's sort of the problem we have right now with some of the
Yeah,
players
also,
we have in house. So if
full
Nico's doing
circle
that,
there.
and also a
Full
little bit
circle.
more, I like how he's got a little bit of Russell Westbrook to his game. I could go that far where he just rips the ball off the board on the defensive rebounds and just tears down the court, just starts flying. That's a little
I,
Westbrookian.
in terms of approach, if not overall athleticism, sure, I'll buy it. I'll go there. I don't know if I'd say
Yeah,
it's
approach.
something better
Yeah.
than nothing. It's a little bit of something. How about that?
It wouldn't shock me if you looked at that from Russell Westbrook. He's like, I love how he pushes it off of defensive rebounds, and I'm just going to do that.
That's fair.
You know what I mean?
That's fair.
So,
Yeah, no, I can see that.
all right. Ceiling, should we do it, or is that just kind of a dumb radio conversation?
No, I think okay. It's nuanced. A lot of our fans and listeners and commenters just refused the idea of like including him in any potential trade for a superstar. Because they feel like there's a lot that the Heat would be giving up by trading Jovic, and I could see that point. And I think they feel the same way about Hyman too. Again, no knock on him. I don't know. I don't know how the franchise views him, whether or not they see him as that kind of building block necessarily, not a cornerstone. That's Bam's space, but is he a potential building block that you could continue to develop alongside Bam and Adebayo? And I think the answer is yes. That's kind of how they view him. But I think at the same time, it's clear you just also need somebody at the top. One of the things that I remember so much about this team in 2019 and the acquisition of Jimmy Butler was that all the past years, the kind of mediocrity and everything else like that, there was no hierarchy. Jimmy showed up, goddamn if there wasn't a hierarchy established right away. And that was something that he could do in 2019, 5 years ago, as a top 1A level type player. Nowadays, he's not that player, not anymore, and not consistently enough. And Bam's not there yet either. So you still need to acquire that superstar to kind of set the tone, create that hierarchy within the roster. But I think Jovic can be viewed as an important stepping stone or a building block alongside that superstar. Yeah. I don't know how you can acquire one without giving up the other. Yeah. But if Miami can do it, that's absolutely the goal.
Super high ceiling. I look at it maybe Lauri Markkanen-esque. If we're talking about if everything works out, I think that's very much in the cards for this guy. with even, he's a better ball handler, kind of.
He's
than
younger.
even Markkanen and younger, by 6 or 7 years. But you're right. Nobody's untouchable. Nobody's untouchable, right? I don't know how many of our fans remember when they were talking about trading for Shaquille O'Neal in 2004. And the big question was, can you part with a guy like Caron Butler for everything he showed in his first couple of years in the NBA? And people
you listen
were
to
split.
him on the UD.
Fans were split.
I hate to cut you off. Did you hear him on the UD podcast? Like he got assurance from Pat Riley that he wasn't getting traded. He had just bought a house over in Doral. He thought he wasn't getting traded, and he was like, "Oh, yep." He found out a little too late. So yeah, it's sorry to cut you off, but that was an interesting point from him. It's like,
and everything Pat Riley tells the media, it's like we're not going to do this. We are going to do that. He's done that for years, and then he's turned around and done the opposite thing within hours or days or whatever. So that's how the NBA works, though. The front office isn't going to tell you what their plan is. So anyway, all right. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow us on your podcast app.